Hi, my name is Lee Kim, and I am a Dorje Shugden practitioner. I am sure many of you have heard many things that many people are talking about out there against the practice of Dorje Shugden and more against the Dorje Shugden practitioners. Why? Where is the source? What information is there to prove and show that all these allegations set forth by the Tibetan government are true? Is Dorje Shugden an evil spirit? Is the practice bad? Are Dorje Shugden practitioners Chinese spies? As ridiculous as all this sounds, it is still out there, and many people are still talking about that. So I think that we all practice the freedom of speech. Now we should practice the freedom of acquiring accurate, logical, reasonable information. So it's time to hear what other people have to say, what Dorje Shugden practitioners have to say. So stay with me and join me to hear and learn and acquire accurate information about what you should think about Dorje Shugden and his practitioners. If you don't mind, I'd like to take a little bit of your time.
All right.
To ask you an important question.
Okay.
The people quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama as evidence that the Dorje Shugden practice is wrong. Would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Okay. When people quote Dalai Lama saying this, they are referring him as a secular leader of Tibet. Some even call him the king of Tibet. When he is regarded as the secular leader of Tibet, he is considered even higher than his guru Trijang Rinpoche by rank. And whatever advice he gave people, it has a lot of effect because he's the authority. However, we all know that the leader of the country around the world, they do and they can make error in judgment. Let's take an example, the US President Donald Trump. Many people criticize him in making the error in judgment in his immigration and trade policies, which has caused negative effects on many people. As such, the question is not whether Dorje Shugden is the correct or the wrong practice, but the question we should be asking is, can Dalai Lama as a secular leader, can he make an error in judgment when he advises people about the Dorje Shugden practice?
I think that's a very interesting twist to the situation by raising this question. And I think it is a good question simply because we want to make people think and we want to make people look deeper into all these allegations made against the Dorje Shugden practice. Thank you so much for your time. It is popular belief that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is Chenrezig. So, if he says that the Dorje Shugden practice is wrong, then the Dalai Lama must be correct. What are your views on this?
In spiritual sense, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is Chenrezig, whereas His Holiness Kyabje Trijang Rinpoche is Vajrayogini. Both of them are Buddhas with same attainment and who shares the same missions of liberating us from our worldly sufferings. The Dalai Lama says Dorje Shugden is worldly spirit, while Trijang Rinpoche said Dorje Shugden is Buddha Manjushri. So, if he says that Dorje Shugden is spirits, then we are saying that Kyabje Trijang Rinpoche, who is one with Vajrayogini, is wrong. Mm-hmm. In other words, we are saying that the Buddha is wrong. How can a Buddha is right, yet another Buddha is wrong? It doesn't make sense. So, in addition, the fifth Dalai Lama used to practice Dorje Shugden during his early age. Both the great fifth Dalai Lama and the young 14th Dalai Lama, who shared the same mind stream with the current Dalai Lama, they used to write prayers for Dorje Shugden. Mm-hmm. So if we say Dorje Shugden is wrong, then we are saying that the previous Dalai Lama could have made mistakes. So in this case, what other mistake did he make? And how do we draw a clear line? So it is either Buddhas are all right or Buddhas could have made mistakes. If he says Buddha are right, then both His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Kyabje Tridang Rinpoche must be right too. But why they appear to in conflict with each other in their view on Dorje Shugden? If the Buddhas can't make mistakes, then perhaps the whole issue is not about Dorje Shugden anymore. During his time, Kyabje Tridang Rinpoche predicted that in the future, both His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Dorje Shugden might appear to be in conflict with each other. But in actuality, they are working hand in hand to achieve a higher goal. So it must be us, the ordinary viewer, who perceive the object wrongly due to our own attachment and projections.
Not to mention ignorance.
Yes, exactly. A good example to explain how our perception deceives us is a very famous example of a young lady and old maid visual illusion. During the test, we show a group of people with a young lady's photos and another group with photos of an old maid. Those who were shown pictures of the young lady will see the visual image, perceive the visual image as a young lady, while the other group who saw the picture of an old maid will perceive the picture as an old maid. Okay, so the truth is no one is wrong. It is a specially designed artwork to explain how our mind perceives things.
So therefore, Pastor Lance, what you are saying now is that if a mind, and to make it worse, is ignorant and uninformed and naive, if a mind is constantly fed with a certain stimuli, may it be visual, audio, or just information, it is a matter of time that the mind will start to understand and perceive this as real, as a fact, regardless of whether rubbish or non-facts are being fed in. The fact that it is constantly stimulating the mind will start to believe in it.
Yes, exactly. It's how our minds work. So, our perceptions, it all depends on how our sensory systems reacts or responds to environmental stimuli and how our brain interprets the information. So, like what you said, if you can't even figure out the tricks behind the visual illusion, then how are we going to be so sure that our viewpoint on this Dorje Shugden issue is solid? And who are we to judge the activities of enlightened beings?
That's an interesting view that you have, and that how, given all the information that's available, especially now with the internet, people don't verify facts. People don't do their necessary due diligence before they spread information. And it's a good angle that you have shared that will make people think more. To start actually asking ourselves, is the issue really just about Dorje Shugden? Or is it a play of the mind? People say that Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit that can harm the life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As a young practitioner, what are your views on this?
First of all, many people believe that His Holiness is Chenrezig or Kuan Yin, who is the Buddha of compassion. Since he is Chenrezig, how can the Buddha be possibly harmed by Dorje Shugden or any evil spirit? The Buddhas do not have the karma to be harmed. If the Buddhas can be harmed, why do we even pray to them for protection, wish fulfilling, and a peace of mind? Based on what I've learned from Tsem Rinpoche's teachings, the Zen, or we call the long shawl, of a monk, has the power to dispel spirits. By the power of the vows which one holds, no evil spirits can harm them. So technically speaking, we do not have to become a Buddha in order to be protected. The fact that His Holiness is a pure monk and has been holding his vows strictly should protect him from the harm of any evil spirit. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is 82 years old now, and he is still extremely alert, healthy, very sharp, and so eloquent. From what I know, for the past 20 years or so, His Holiness has been saying that the practice of Dorje Shugden shortens his life. I sometimes found myself wondering If Dorje Shugden is so evil, would His Holiness the Dalai Lama still be so healthy as the great king of Tibet and being able to travel around to teach? This brings me to believe that what people are saying about Dorje Shugden being an evil spirit and causing harm to His Holiness is not true.
Thank you very much for your time, Beatrix, and of course for a very clear point of view on your stand. People say that Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit and harms practitioners. As a Buddhist pastor, what is your perspective on this?
First off, let me say that Dorje Shugden is not an evil spirit that harms practitioners. And I can actually explain this to you in two ways. First, from the point of the very principles of Buddhism itself, and second, from the point of view of the enlightened masters. Now, first, the very fundamental practice of Buddhism is actually taking refuge. Taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what is taking refuge? Taking refuge is having full and complete faith and reliance on the three jewels. And a benefit of that is being protected from spirit harm. So to say that Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit and can harm practitioners actually contradicts refuge, which is supposed to grant you protection. Secondly, if we are afflicted by spirit harm, we seek help from the enlightened masters, such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche, and many others. And the reason we seek their help is because they have spiritual attainments. And part of those spiritual attainments is the ability to perform powerful exorcisms, cure spirit harm, and provide protection. So to say that Dorje Shugden harms practitioners is actually to discredit the spiritual attainments of these very masters. So basically there would be no point in going to these spiritual masters for teachings, for guidance, or for protection. So therefore these are the two ways. If we say that Dorje Shugden harms practitioners, we actually contradict the fundamental principle of Buddhism itself, and at the same time discredit the spiritual attainments of the masters that we seek out.
Thank you, Pastor Nirao, for your explanation. So basically what you have said from your explanation is that all these allegations against Dorje Shugden practice and statements that say that he is an evil spirit and harms practitioners is basically nonsense.
Correct.
I like that very much, and I think it should clarify a lot for many people out there who are confused. People say that Dorje Shugden is a harmful demonic spirit. What are your thoughts?
This is not true and very illogical because Tibetan Buddhism is known to be the most powerful to subjugate evil spirits and demons. For example, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava has subjugated a harmful evil spirit named Nechong and made him a protector that protects the Buddha Dharma. And since then, Nechong has been the Tibetan Buddhist Dharma protector for the past 1,300 years, keeping his promise to Guru Rinpoche to protect the Buddha Dharma. Also, contemporary High Lamas like Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche and Dromon Geshe Rinpoche are also known to have the ability to subjugate evil spirits and demons. So, it is proven with time that High Lamas can indeed subjugate evil spirits and demons. And we all know for a fact that since the 5th Dalai Lama's time, there are many High Lamas who try to subjugate the so-called Dorje Shugden evil spirit, but they fail. For example, Mindraling Rinpoche, the famous Mindraling Rinpoche, he did a series of powerful fire puja to bind Dorje Shugden, but in the end, he failed. Why is this? So, are the High Lamas incapable or incompetent to bind an evil spirit, like Dorje Shugden? They said it. So, this is not possible, and we know this is not true. So this only leads to one conclusion, that Dorje Shugden is not a harmful evil spirit, but he is a Buddha, so he cannot be subdued. After all, if Dorje Shugden is such an evil, harmful spirit, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and other High Lamas should just subdue him instead of keep talking about how scary he is, so that everyone can have a peace of mind. But we know this is not the case.
Thank you so much for your time. So from what you have said, it is clearly Dorje Shugden is not an evil spirit because he can't be subdued.
Yes.
As such, he must be a Buddha. So I trust that what you've explained will clear many people's minds of all these false allegations.
Yes.
Thank you again for your
Thank
time. People say that Dorje Shugden is a harmful, demonic spirit. I wanted your opinion because, not saying you're old, but being more matured, therefore not so easily influenced, and having studied the law, what is your perspective?
I strongly disagree, just because it's illogical. Another angle to look at this wrong view is why Dorje Shugden is being singled out. Assuming that Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit, which he's not, but hypothetically speaking, even if Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit, he's not the only evil spirit in existence.
That's true.
And we know that for a fact. Within the Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 realms, one of which is the hungry ghost realm. And in it, there are infinite number of evil spirits. Further, Dorje Shugden is not even said to be the most harmful evil spirit around. So, why pick on Dorje Shugden? Hence, there has to be another reason, a hidden agenda as to why the continuous attack on Dorje Shugden. After all, why kick such a big fuss over a common ghostly phenomenon? Let me ask you this question. Why is Dorje Shugden clearly isolated and singled out by the Tibetan leadership to be condemned? Are those spiritual or political implications?
I think that's a very good question. In fact, very valid for people who wish to truly understand. And if you look at it spiritually, it is hard to believe that it is a spiritual reason. I think it's more otherwise.
Well, I believe there's a political reasons to it. And why do I say that? Well, let me state the facts as how I see it. The Tibetan leadership has promised the Tibetan in exile the return to Tibet for decades now. But factually, it is obvious that they are nowhere near there. To make things worse, the Tibetan in exile are in dire straits, and they are no better than how they were when they first arrived in India following the Dalai Lama into exile in 1959. So, the Tibetan leadership would have to explain themselves, and they conveniently used Dorje Shugden as a scapegoat to cover up their failures to date. Why else would a so-called democratic leadership spend so much time and resources to unconstitutionally persecute a religious practice and criminalize its practitioner? Especially since every unsubstantiated allegations by the Tibetan leadership against Dorje Shugden have been logically debunked.
You have raised some very strong points and very valid in today's time for people who are tired of what others are saying about Dorje Shugden and his practitioners. Asking whether there is another agenda is very valid. And to state the situation as it is today, where things aren't great, most of all, promises have not been fulfilled. It's really time to question. And I think you have raised some very good questions. For those of you who want to think more, consider what Cindy has asked. What is the agenda? What is this really about?
People are saying that the practice of Dorje Shugden will result in a negative rebirth. What are your views on this?
I disagree with this statement for the simple logical reason that in the past there were many great High Lamas who practiced Dorje Shugden and also practitioners as well. And many of these these High Lamas had passed away and taken rebirth. And the thing is, they have taken human rebirth. They've taken rebirth as their incarnations of the predecessors. So they've been recognized, especially by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'll give you an example, like His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche. And this is the junior tutor of the Dalai Lama himself. And he had been a great prolific teacher, spreading the Sutra and Tantra teachings, and especially Dorje Shugden. Mm-hmm. So he had taken rebirth, human rebirth. And there's many others. For example, there is Song Rinpoche, there is the Panchen Lama, there is Geshe Rabten. All these are lamas that not only practice Dorje Shugden, but they also proliferated the practice. So they have taken a human rebirth, instead of negative rebirths.
So what you're explaining here is that when for example, High Lamas reincarnate to a human form and then further recognized as the reincarnation of their predecessor, that's considered a positive rebirth.
That's right.
And then negative rebirth would be, for example,
There is what we call the three lower realms, which is animal, hungry ghosts, and hell beings.
Right.
So that is a negative rebirth. So, but they have taken human rebirth, so it totally defies the statement. And the interesting part about this is that these high lamas were recognized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself, the one who originated this statement that Dorje Shugden practice leads one to a negative rebirth. So basically, based on this, what I've just said regarding all these high lamas, Dorje Shugden high lamas who have taken rebirth, their very presence as incarnations of their predecessors is a living proof that defies the statement that Dorje Shugden leads to a negative rebirth. So it's safe to have that conclusion that it's not true.
so based on what you have explained from your view, this statement that says that Dorje Shugden, the practice of Dorje Shugden will lead to a negative rebirth is highly inaccurate.
That's right.
Thank you very much for your time.
People say that Dorje Shugden practitioners are on China's payroll to create problems for Tibet. What are your views on this?
This is not correct. Dorje Shugden people want to practice Dorje Shugden, and they are not on Chinese payroll, and they do not want to create problems for Tibet for sure. So the practice of Dorje Shugden dates back to about 400 years. On the other hand, the issue with Tibet and China goes back only about to 60 years. So there is no correlation with the Dorje Shugden practice and the problems with China for Tibet. Then also, the Dorje Shugden practitioners live all over the world, and they for sure don't want problems for Tibet. There are many High Lamas who practice Dorje Shugden, such as His Holiness Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche, Kyabje Trijang Rinpoche, and today, do you want to say they are Chinese spies? I mean, it makes no sense at all. For me personally, I have supported the Tibetan cause back in my country for a number of years. And I have supported the Tibetan Children's Village. I was in the Friends of Tibet for several years. So, and after having received the Dorje Shugden practice some years ago, there's no reason for me to change this, to change my views on Tibet and to stop my support towards Tibet and the Tibetan people.
From what you have shared, it is your opinion that these claims are nonsense, they are inaccurate, they're incorrect, because people around the world, Tibetans around the world, do not want to have these constant problems that are caused simply because of allegations made against DS practitioners. So you do not think that it is logical for DS practitioners to be any Chinese spy?
And what I just want is I want to do my practice freely. I don't want to be called names on social media.
I believe Chinese dog is very commonly used. Even, obviously you're not Chinese.
Yes, obviously.
Yet they can still use that on you.
Yes, they do.
I guess that is how illogical their thinking process is. People who are making accusations against Dorje Shugden practitioners.
Yes.
Thank you, Pastor Antoinette, for your time.
Thank you, Lukim.
People are saying that Dorje Shugden practitioners are on China's payroll to create problems for Tibet. What are your views on this?
Well, I think it's very much a generalization. We read about all sorts of crime every day in the newspapers, murders, rapes, corporate crimes. But certainly, if you think about it, if a murder happens in America and is reported, does that mean that all Americans are murderers? No, obviously not. Similarly, if, for example, if you hear of, say, a church leader embezzling funds from a church, that doesn't mean all church leaders are embezzlers. Yeah. if you put that in context with Dorje Shugden and the Tibetans in general, I'm sure, in the world today, there are good people, there are bad people. If a Tibetan, for example, for whatever personal reason, works in the interest for the Chinese, you cannot definitely say that all Tibetans work for the Chinese. It's just illogical. If you apply that to Dorje Shugden practitioners, as you said, your question, the same. Whereby if, for whatever personal reason, a Dorje Shugden practitioner receives some form of financial aid from the 1.3 billion Chinese, there must be some person that is generous enough to aid this particular Dorje Shugden practitioner. You cannot generalize the same for all Dorje Shugden practitioners. What the Tibetan leadership is doing now in generalizing and calling all Dorje Shugden practitioners as dogs of the Chinese.
That's right. Actually, Chinese dogs is very common.
Yeah.
They use it very, very commonly
Correct.
against the DS
right.
practitioners, yes.
As all of them, we are all receiving financial aid, funds from China. That cannot be logical, cannot be possible. So what I would like to say in a question is that personally also, I'm a Dorje Shugden practitioner, as you know, and I can say for sure that I don't receive any money from China. And I'm sure that is the same for many, many, many other Dorje Shugden practitioners.
Right. So basically, what I understand from what you have expressed is that people have a tendency to generalize. They see something happen and then they generalize and they make it like it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And sometimes these generalizations are just baseless and there's insufficient evidence to make such a generalization. And similarly, there may be a small population of Tibetans who may receive funds or have financial connections with China, and these Tibetans need not be Dorje Shugden practitioners, or they may be Dorje Shugden practitioners. So to generalize like what they have done now, to say that all DS practitioners are on China's payroll to make trouble for Tibet is actually very, very inaccurate.
Yes, it makes them look stupid.
Thank you for your time and to share your thoughts with me.
Thank you, Ricky.
People say that Dorje Shugden practitioners are on China's payroll to create trouble for Tibet. What are your views on this?
I don't really agree with this opinion. You see, by linking the Dorje Shugden practitioners with the China or Chinese government, the Central Tibetan Administration, or sometimes we call them CTA, they're actually creating a distraction on what they have not done for the Tibetan people in exile for the past 60 years. There have been a very ineffective leadership so
That's
far.
true.
Yeah. So the way they talk about Dorje Shugden practitioners is baseless and really racist, the comments that they have made. This is so that they could stir up the adverse sentiments of the Tibetan peoples towards the Dorje Shugden practitioners. So in a way, they can hide what they have not done so far. By also saying that about Dorje Shugden practitioners, CTA is not helping in any way by further inciting the antagonism between China and Tibet. So the wish of Dalai Lama to become part of China as an autonomous region would not achieve this objective. So CTA is totally against what His Holiness wants to do. If CTA genuinely wishes to solve the problem, they could have just removed the ban. By doing so, they could heal the divide between China and Tibet, and also the division within the Tibetan community. And also then, His Holiness Dalai Lama's wishes to return to China would materialize.
Okay, so you are of the view that all this talk about Dorje Shugden practitioners being on China's payroll to create trouble for Tibet is basically a smokescreen, a cover-up to distract people from realizing how inefficient the CTA government has been.
Yes.
I can see that. And also you feel that if there's so much complaints about this kind of allegations about DS practitioners being on China's payroll, what you think is just lift the ban.
Yeah,
And the
as simple
CTA
as that.
actually has the authority to just lift the ban.
Correct.
So there'll be no more problems to talk about.
Yes, that's correct.
So they created the problem so that they can talk about the problem and then cover up the real problem, which is their inefficiency.
Yeah.
Okay.
No one community stay as refugee for 60 years.
Correct. Now that you have heard what many people say out there, which is obviously nonsense, saying that Dorje Shugden practice is wrong, claiming that Dorje Shugden practitioners are paid by the Chinese to make trouble for the Tibetans, all that baseless accusations is only to prove how much discrimination there is against Dorje Shugden practitioners. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tibetan government wants you to believe all these allegations. They have not made the effort to give you logic, reason, evidence even, to prove what they are claiming. Therefore, let me ask you, if these questions is out there, is in your head, where are you going to find your answers? Are you going to the source where all these allegations started? It's not the right way. You should go and explore, and I hope that these videos that I have shared with you, with what other people have to say, will shed light, logic, reason, and most of all, compassion in your thoughts towards the practice of Dorje Shugden and, of course, Dorje Shugden practitioners. This is the time to be united and harmonious, not to have further division. The Tibetan people do not need any more problems, and the Tibetan government needs to recognize that. And so for all of us out there who may or may not be directly involved with the plight, the suffering of Tibetans, it is only important to be humane and understand it correctly. There is nothing wrong with the practice of Dorje Shugden. And most of all, Dorje Shugden practitioners are not criminals. They are not Chinese spies. They are only people wanting to be free to practice what they believe. On that note, I thank you for listening. Most of all, I plead that you think logically and with reason, and most of all, with compassion.